I'm David Grano with Aliyah Media. May 13th through 19th marks National Police Week, which pays recognition to the men and women of law enforcement who have made the ultimate sacrifice for the safety and protection of others. I sat down with Sheriff Joe Lombardo of the Las Vegas Metro Police Department to talk about the challenges that officers face today. Here's what he had to say. Well, Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
I want to say, first of all, I'm relieved that it's me questioning the sheriff and not the other way around.
That's a common response.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh,
it depends on what kind of questions you ask. I might change it up on you.
That is true. Well, we don't want the lights to get a little too hot under me. But how long have you been in law enforcement for?
Well, I'm just calculating in my head, but that's an easy question to answer. Obviously, it's 30 years. 30 years. I started in the academy in September 6th of 1988. So to September 6th of this year, 2018, 30 years. So I had no desire to even, I had no inkling I was going to be a police officer. You know, when I first joined, I formally trained as an engineer and then, went to school, UNLV, the whole 9 yards. And I'm the son of a military family. So we traveled to a lot of different locations throughout my life. And we ended up here in Las Vegas. My dad retired at Nellis Air Force Base. So I went in the Army myself, and then I came back and went to UNLV for quite a while. And then I went and did a ride-along with a buddy of mine. He was an existing police officer, and I was bit by the bug. I didn't enjoy what I was doing for a living at the time, and then so I applied and got hired. So I did it for the, people always ask you, well, why do you want to be a police officer, or why did you become a police officer? And it was more, for me, initially, the adrenaline bug. But as time progressed and you see you have the effect on the community and individuals and how you can make their quality of life, that's much better with what you do. It changes. And it's absolutely accurate when people say, I do it for the good of the people. And that's why I've had so much longevity, because you see the results of your work.
Looking back at the beginning of your career and as it progressed, how has the job changed? What elements would you say are strikingly different from back then to now?
Actually, sometimes I don't like to describe it this way, but I do, because it's true. We were considered knuckle draggers for a long time. We were you were hired based on your brawn, not your brain. It was, you were expected to get in tussles with people and effect arrests and take them to jail. And it was really simple years and years ago. Now with technology and we hire you more for your brain power. We expect you to use your mouth versus your brawn as a tool, de-escalation tool. And so, and the complication of crime has changed over time. The way people can commit ID theft and fraud and how they manipulate the currency systems, credit card fraud, all those different kind of things have changed over time. Before it was just pretty cut and dry, robbery or burglary or a homicide, but police work in general has changed in its totality over time, especially in my career. And it's happened fairly fast. 30 years I've been on, and it's a complete different job function for a police officer. And, the other thing I don't want to leave out, which is probably the most important piece, is, we're expected to be experts in everything. Experts in dealing with the homeless, expert with people with mental health issues, expert in incarceration problems, part of the justice system. So the tools that's needed by a police officer has to be a lot more wider breadth of understanding and tools to be successful. As before, it was fairly simple.
What would you say was the most challenging point in your career up to this point?
Well, it would be simple for me to say 1 October, but I think the most challenging would probably be 9/11. It brought a whole different paradigm into police work. It changed how we looked at things. It changed how we attempted to prevent crime from happening. the intent of a police officer from the get-go is prevention of crime. It's a failed system just strictly responding to crime. But we never thought about dealing with terrorism. Terrorism was a whole different paradigm associated with police work, and we had to change how we looked at that, how we investigated, how we learned about religions and cultures and history and racism. The whole paradigm changed. And so I think that probably is the biggest influence on me in my position. It may be different for other people, but then more recently, 1 October. So.
Now, how has technology changed the whole game? You did mention technology just previously, but how has it completely changed the game? Not just for you, but also from the perspective of the assailants.
Yeah, I'm glad you couched it that way, because it's both ways. The assailants or the criminals or the crooks, however you want to describe them, how they've complicated our job. I mentioned some of them: ID theft and monetary fraud and everything they do via the computers and via the phone system, and however you can do to manipulate somebody to give up their money. Those are very difficult investigations to conduct. It's like, where did it originate from? Where did the money end up? Who is that exactly the victim, the bank or the individual citizen? So technology has changed a lot in that aspect, especially the internet and their ability to commit crimes. But it's also given us the ability to work smarter versus harder. I think I always say that internet it works both ways. It helps the criminal element, and it also helps the police department. It's probably the most robust tool in fighting crime, especially the social media aspect, and developing suspects and identifying them and arresting them, and conducting the investigation along the way. It's amazing how stupid some people can be. They boast about their crimes on social media. Or we develop who their friends are, or where they're living, or all the different aspects of that. But technology also made our jobs easier. We get a lot more information based on individuals when we encounter them, a lot of their historical information, a lot of information on locations, residences, businesses, and it's helped us with the history of individuals and companies and all the different aspects that we do with investigating crime.
Now, you were in front of the camera after the October 1st incident. Also, social media played a very important role. You just mentioned social media playing an important role in investigations, but it also plays an important role in community outreach. How important is public relations as a skill for a police officer today?
It's probably, I'll equate public relations with communication. I think it's more important than any other aspect of being a police officer nowadays. Before, like I had mentioned before, it was based on how fast you could run and how many push-ups you can do. And now it's based on your ability to communicate, to interact with the community, have the community help you. It's the words customer service were never used before in police work, and today that's a common reality. We're more customer service oriented than we have ever been. It's very frustrating for me as the head of an agency to get calls where people have been victimized, and a call will reach up to my office because we failed to respond poorly. We responded poorly, or we failed to do follow-up on particular cases where we have evidence that we could follow up on. So it's really changed in that aspect. Customer service is a key word now versus, response and prevent as it was before. So.
What efforts are Las Vegas Metro making to be able to create more collaboration, cooperation with the community?
Well, the mantra we use in police work nowadays is you can't rest your way out of a problem. We don't have enough jail space, first of all, nor do we have enough people to do that all along the way. But what we do is try to enlist. It's a force multiplier. We try to enlist the community as often as we can. We rely on them to help us in improving the quality of life of themselves and helping us determine the reasons for crime and who committed the crimes and why did the crime committed. So here on Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, I stood up, when I got elected, I stood up a bureau. It's called the Office of Community Engagement. You know, individual officers have great ideas. But the problem is they like to go work over here tomorrow and then work over there next year, and their ideas go away with them. And those ideas usually encompass community engagement. And so what we did was we stood up this bureau to create that sustainability. So an officer comes up with a good idea. This is how we need to interact with this particular community based on cultural reasons or race reasons or anything, geography. And this is how we're successful. And that project is stood up, and then it gets its sustainability through the Office of Community Engagement. Who in the community can contact in the police department to get answers, per se? You know, that proverbial red tape, get rid of the red tape. You know, it's just like having your own personal physician. You know, I have an ailment in my gut. I need to call my doctor and talk about it. It's no different in police work. You have to have people that have knowledge in the community of what the hell's going on in the community to be able to call us directly and get answers.
Now, this is the first National Police Week since the October 1st shooting. You did lose one of your off-duty deputies.
Charleston Hartfield.
How different is this National Police Week from previous years?
You know, unfortunately, shortly after, actually right before I got elected, we lost two of our own, Alan Beck and Igor Soldo. But I happened to be the sheriff when it was Police Week, when Police Week came around, to say their names at the vigil in Washington, D.C. And, you know, as a head of an agency, you pray that you never have to do it again. First of all, you pray that you never have to do it. And then you pray that if it does happen, that you never have to do it again. So, but unfortunately, it's happened to me twice now. And Charleston Hartfield was attending the concert on 1 October. He was attempting to render aid to individuals that had been shot. And in the process, he himself got shot. And he succumbed to his wounds. And then, so we're dealing with that internally. And his family's dealing with that, obviously. And so this week at Police Week, I'll be reading his name at the Candlelight Vigil to post his name at the memorial. And so it's a big deal for me personally, internally. It's a big deal for the police department because it's a constant reminder the dangers of our job. And, you know, and I think it's important to have that recognition and that longevity and the sustainability in that recognition because it's, you know, people need to remember.
And on that note, because it is National Police Week, what message would you give out to citizens who are unaware of it being National Police Week about the importance of this week, and what can they do to foster better relations with police departments in their community?
Well, the best description of National Police Week is every week, well, every May, a particular week in the month, it's identified as National Police Week. And every state themselves have their own not celebration, but ceremony. Here in Southern Nevada, it will occur in 2 weeks here at the Police Memorial here locally. But nationally, it's done in Washington, D.C., and it gives the opportunity for the heads of agencies that have lost officers to verbally and physically recognize them. And, you know, quite often it's attended by either the vice president or the president. And to let people know the danger of our job and the appreciation of our job. So the question you presented was, what could people do? And what I often get presented that question, and what I can easily answer is just say thank you. If you see a police officer at the restaurant, if you see a police officer doing their duties without obstructing what they're doing, or you have the opportunity to encounter a police officer in a community event, is just go up and shake their hand and say thank you for everything you do. That's all they want to hear. You know, they know why they signed up, but they want to be appreciated as often as they can be.
Last question is, this city is growing, it's booming out there. what do you think are going to be some of the challenges that the police department is going to face as the city expands with the coming of the Raiders, WNBA team, potentially many more businesses? How is your job going to be affected?
Well, you can look at it two ways. One is thank you for the economy, right? I mean, the economy pays our salaries and makes us a community in a city. But in law enforcement, we sometimes look at it the opposite way. It's like that's that much more work for us. But every police chief or sheriff in the nation can say the same thing. Any increase in the economy, any increase in the population, you have to have an increase in officers. For the economy to prosper, you have to have a safe community. And the effect for me personally is managing those events, especially things like the Raiders, and now we got the Golden Knights, and all those special events have to be managed and provide a level of safety so people return. And then as population increases, you got to provide safety in the neighborhoods where they live, where people work, everything that goes along with it. And so the biggest issue for all police leaders is the ability to hire via the budgeting process and the ability for the community to support the law enforcement.
Is part of your plan to attract senior leadership from other law enforcement agencies from across the country?
No, we're really not designed that way. Some police departments are. That's what they do, but that's not our design. All our senior leadership is promoted from within. They're just people that you identify within the organization, existing organization, and you pick them and they get promoted, or they test at a certain level to promote. But my position itself, the sheriff, is an elected position. So it could be an individual from the outside that comes in and runs for office and gets elected. Hopefully not, because I'm running again. And but that's the design here. So you don't really bring in people from the outside.
And my softball question of the interview. Now, be honest with me.
Is it a softball?
This is a massively softball.
What about a basketball?
You've got a pantry across the hall. You've got a private bathroom with a shower. Is that the reason why you did this?
Absolutely not. It's because I spend so many hours here. That's why. So I usually have to change my costume every once in a while. So.
Well, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you, David.
Interview.
I appreciate it.